Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we try to plunge into some fascinating topics, sometimes the unexpected ones. And today, we're looking at something that might challenge a few common assumptions, actually, about age, independence, and what really makes a full life. We're digging into an area that, frankly, often gets overlooked, or maybe feels a bit taboo. But it's really relevant to a big and growing group of people. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and the source for our deep dive today, it's excerpts from Solo Intimacy After 60. So like the title suggests, we're focusing right on that specific point where age, living situation, and personal connection meet, essentially. Living alone and having sex over the age of 60. And maybe we should clarify just quickly when we say solo intimacy here.
Good idea.
We mean how people who live alone navigate and fulfill their emotional, physical, maybe sexual needs and desires without someone living with them.
Yeah.
And it's this specific combo age, living alone, intimacy, that gives us, I think, a really unique way to look at how society's ideas are changing.
Yeah.
And also those really personal, individual stories. Our mission really is just to shed some light on this. It's an important part of life that doesn't get talked about much.
That clarification is super helpful, yeah. Because, let's face it, even just the phrase sex after 60, that alone can bring up some reactions for people listening. But then you add solo intimacy for older adults living alone. It feels like that might amplify some, I don't know, preconceived ideas even more. What are the sort of typical societal things you see when this topic comes up? Is it just ignored, or is there like an active discomfort there?
It's a bit of a mix, really. But yeah, largely it leans towards discomfort or just dismissal. Society, for ages, has had this really narrow definition of sexuality, hasn't it?
Right.
Tying it mostly to youth or maybe procreation or definitely to long-term, live-in partnerships. So when you talk about sex, and especially solo intimacy, for people over 60, it just crashes right into those ageist ideas.
Yeah.
Those beliefs that sort of diminish or even ridicule older adults' desires, their capacity for intimacy. What's really fascinating, though, is that just the fact that a source like Solo Intimacy After 60 exists, that in itself is a powerful challenge to those narratives. It's like a direct counter-story. It pushes back against that assumption that desire just fades away, or that sexual activity stops with age, or becomes irrelevant if you're not living with a partner. The reality, like our source shows, is that people over 60 are living alone and they're having sex.
Right.
This isn't some tiny niche thing. It's a vibrant part of many lives. And it forces us, really, to take apart those old limiting views. It just reminds us that human desire needing connection, that stuff isn't tied to a calendar page or marriage license.
Okay, so society often dismisses it. But then how does that specific part, the living alone part, how does that uniquely shape things? The pursuit of intimacy, sex, for older adults. It's one thing talking about intimacy generally for older people, but if you're not sharing your home, what are the specific challenges, or maybe, like you hinted, some unexpected freedoms, opportunities?
That's a really key distinction, actually, because living alone, it presents this interesting dual nature when it comes to intimacy. On one side, you've got this huge amount of personal autonomy, privacy.
Yeah.
Think about someone maybe recently widowed after being married for decades living together, or someone who's chosen to live alone for years. That independence means they can explore their sexuality, their desires, their needs, without immediate judgment or negotiation or the expectations you might get in a shared home.
Right, less pressure maybe.
Exactly. There's a freedom there to define intimacy on their own terms, at their own speed, exploring what feels good without someone else influencing it directly. And that freedom, it can lead to, deeper self-acceptance, maybe rediscovering your own body, pursuing connections, or even solo forms of intimacy, just as you choose.
So it's not just about not having a partner there. It's about having this specific kind of self-directed freedom.
Interesting. But you said dual nature. So what's the other side of that coin? Privacy is great, but does living alone create different hurdles for connection?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the flip side. While the autonomy is empowering, living alone can mean different ways of meeting potential partners or, engaging sexually. It means making connections, if that's the goal, often takes a more proactive approach, an intentional one.
You have to seek it out more. You do. You're not just bumping into someone in the kitchen every morning. So people might lean on their social networks, maybe reconnect with old friends, join groups, clubs, things that interest them. Or increasingly, you see people exploring online dating, platforms specifically for older adults.
Right.
And this isn't about being desperate, it's about agency, taking control. It's actively seeking connection outside the home, maybe adapting to new ways of dating, relating. For some, yeah, that might feel like a challenge at first, but for many, it actually becomes this journey of self-discovery, a chance to really shape their social and intimate lives how they want, not just based on circumstance. It really puts the responsibility or the opportunity for connection onto the individual, leading to this very intentional, self-directed intimacy.
That leads us really nicely into the having sex over 60 part, which I find this really interesting because it's easy to just think, oh, it's like before, maybe just, happens less often.
Mhm.
But the source, solo intimacy after 60, it seems to suggest well, it's more complex than that. How does sex and intimacy actually change, evolve, maybe deepen, or take new forms for people past 60, especially if they're living alone?
You've really hit on a key point there.
Mm-hmm.
It's rarely just a simple continuation. If we were to
Yeah.
connect this to the bigger picture, lifelong development, it's pretty clear that sexuality can transform. And often it actually enriches with age. Okay, sure, physical changes happen. That's natural as we age.
Of course.
But what our source seems to highlight is that desire, pleasure, that basic human need for connection. That stuff is absolutely not tied to age. In fact, many older adults approach sex with maybe greater emotional maturity, deeper self-awareness, a better understanding of what actually satisfies them.
Oh, okay.
So this often means less focus on, say, performance or those kind of rigid, youth-focused ideas of what sex should look like,
Yeah.
and maybe more emphasis on intimacy itself, communication, tenderness, mutual pleasure.
So it's maybe less about the specific act and more about the quality, the connection, the whole experience.
Precisely, yeah. Imagine moving from maybe a checklist kind of approach to something more holistic,
Yeah.
sensory, emotionally rich. And that can lead to a more profound, more satisfying sexual life, embracing different ways of expressing things that maybe weren't explored or even thought about when younger.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, it could be a new appreciation for just touch, or deep conversation, shared laughter, or just, being fully present with someone intimately. The definition of sex itself often gets broader. It includes a wider range of physical, emotional intimacy expressions, moving beyond just penetrative acts to embrace whatever brings genuine closeness, satisfaction, and importantly for the solo intimacy part we mentioned,
Right.
this change can also include self-pleasure, a deeper, more intentional connection with your own body, your own desires. This self-discovery, this self-nurturing part, it's incredibly empowering for people living alone. It lets them keep a vibrant sexual life, whatever their relationship status is. It's about seeing well-being holistically. And that definitely includes your sexual self. It gives agency, a sense of being complete in your own skin.
That really does reframe things, doesn't it? How we think about a sexual life expands it way beyond the usual stories. So, okay, let's bring this back to you, the listener. What does all this mean? Why is it actually important to understand these realities of solo intimacy and sex after 60? It's not just about one age group, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's definitely not just about a specific demographic. This whole deep dive, fundamentally, it's about challenging those widespread stereotypes we talked about and promoting a much more comprehensive, more inclusive understanding of human sexuality, desire, well-being across the whole lifespan. When we recognize that intimacy and sex are, vital parts of a full, healthy life, whatever your age, whatever your living situation, we, as a society, foster more empathy.
Right.
We reduce that subtle, insidious ageism. And crucially, we empower individuals, including ourselves, right, as we get older, to embrace their own desires, their own needs at every single stage.
Yeah.
It helps us move away from that narrow, youth-focused view of sexuality towards one that actually celebrates the richness, the diversity of human experience. Understanding this helps us build a more compassionate, more understanding, and frankly, just a more realistic society, one that values people for who they are throughout their lives, without diminishing their basic needs for connection, pleasure, self-expression, just because of a number on a birth certificate. It's about imagining a future for all of us where age isn't a barrier to fulfillment and intimacy.
This has been really, really illuminating. We started by, facing those ingrained ideas. Then we moved through understanding that unique situation of living alone later in life. And we ended up appreciating how intimacy and sex can actually evolve, deepen past 60. What really stands out for me is how clear it is that the capacity for desire, for connection, for pleasure, it's fundamental. It's lifelong. It's
Right.
not something that just disappears with age or only exists if you live with a partner.
Exactly. And that brings up, I think, a really crucial question for you listening to consider. Given that a really significant and growing part of our population fits this description, living alone, navigating intimacy after 60. How might a more open, informed, accepting conversation in society about this topic? How might that not only benefit older adults themselves by just validating their experiences, but also how might it fundamentally reshape how all of us view aging
Mhm.
and independence and the enduring human need we all have for connection and fulfillment throughout our entire lives? It's really an invitation, I suppose, for you to reflect on what a truly full, vibrant life looks like at any age and what role intimacy plays in that very personal picture for you.